Hello everyone and welcome to, what can only be described as a beautiful miniature ruined by the times we live in. It's Quang Liem versus Magnus Carlsen. It's from the quarterfinals of the Airthings Masters, and this is game 4. Magnus won game 1, and then of course Le had to bounce back to get back into the match. Games 3 and 2 ended in a draw, and this is now game 4. Le has the white pieces, and he has to win to force tiebreaks, otherwise it's Magnus into the semifinals. So let's check it out. It's quite a beautiful game, really played in the style of the old Masters, so you guys will enjoy this one. So with the white pieces opens with d4. We have d5 by Magnus, c4, e6, and now knight to c3. So nicely developing. Queen's Gambit declined is on the board, and now Magnus goes for the very sharp Tarrasch defense. We have c captures on d5, and now if Magnus wants to play a nice calm game, he could go e captures on d5, but here he plays c captures on d4, and this is the incredibly sharp Shara gambit of the Tarrasch defense. And you will soon see why. We have queen to a4 with check, bishop to d7 blocking check and attacking the queen. Queen captures on d4, and now e captures on d5, so grabbing the pawn, but now queen captures on d5. And now, okay, white won a pawn, but black will get a lot of development in. Knight to f6 attacks the queen, and now the queen can retreat to, a lot of squares, but queen to d1 is considered the safest and the strongest, however, not the most exciting square. And now, okay, just bishop to c5. And now, if you look at the position, for the price of one pawn, Magnus already has two bishops in the game, the knight is already developed, he's ready to castle, and all the developing squares for his pieces are very natural and very easy to just go for. So white still has to make a few more moves. He needs to move the pawn, the bishop, the knight, and he needs 4 more moves to castle at least. So knight to f3, he has to start doing something about this. Knight to c6, again, another move, another development. e3, preparing to develop the bishop, and now Magnus castle. So nicely developing pieces, castling the king. We have bishop to e2, now Le is also ready to castle, and the queen to e7. Now saying that, alright, this rook might come to d8, your queen is still on d1. So really rapid development. We have castles by Le, and now the position is a known one. For example, rook f to e8 has been played, rook a to d8 has been played, even rook f to d8 has been played last year. Alexander Grishuk played this against Ding Liren. He lost the game, but it was a very nice one in the FTX Crypto Cup. But here Magnus goes for knight to e5. It's not a new move. It has been played once by a fellow Norwegian. Arjan Tari played it in 2021 in December against Salim Saleh, but in that game bishop to d2 was played, and also Tari lost this game with black. So here bishop to d2 is a non-move, but the move Le plays knight to d4 is a non-move. So now already as of move 13 we have a completely new game, and now Magnus goes back, knight to c6. He says, all things considered, I only need a draw to advance. What do you play here? And also I'm gonna put the rook on d8. There will be a lot of pressure on the knight on d4. So if you want, you can capture on c6, but then I just get my bishop here, and this is now, just very nice for black. So instead we have a3, preparing further development, and Magnus, of course, prevents this. He plays a5, and now we play b3. So at some point we will fianchetto our bishop to this long diagonal. Rook a to d8, as the queen is still on d1, so a very natural square to develop the rook, and now knight c to b5. And it looks like there's a lot happening here, but white is actually perfectly fine here and controlling that knight very well. If some like bishop c8, we put more pressure on the knight. Here just bishop b2. This is kind of what the white wanted. So here after knight c to b5, Magnus captures on d4. We have knight captures on d4, and now even bishop captures on d4. So queen captures on d4, and it looks like this is exactly what white wants. He wants to trade down now as he is up a pawn, so you want pieces of the board, you want pawns on the board, and now bishop to b5, attacking the bishop and the queen, but again, perfectly fine for Le. He just goes queen b2, defends the e2 square. So bishop captures, queen captures, and now white traded down a lot of pieces, but now Magnus gets knight to e4. And now look at this. This knight is on a beautiful e4 outpost, and white does not have a knight or knights, and he doesn't have a light square bishop. So how are you ever getting rid of this knight from e4? One way is to play f3, but that's weakening your king's position, and that's, of course, what black wants. So here we have a4, preventing b5 anytime soon, and also preparing bishop to a3. This would win material. So Magnus has to play rook f to e8, which is not a problem. He wants to develop this rook either way. Bishop to a3, attacking the queen while developing, and now queen to e6, putting pressure on that b3 pawn, and now Le defends it by advancing it. Pawn to b4, and now Magnus plays rook to d2. So it looks very scary, but if something like queen to e1, then the game just continues. For example, b6, and nothing really terrible is happening here. White is a little bit passive with the queen on e1, rook on f1, and he's gonna have to do something very radical if he wants to get winning chances here. However, after rook to d2, Le played queen to b5, and now there is a problem. Now the queen is too far away from the king, and now look at this, queen and the rook on the e file going after that e3 pawn. So we just have to imagine that there is no f2 pawn, so like imagine there is no spoon. Only here the difference is you can actually do that. So here knight captures on f2 by Magnus, and now what do you play here? The problem is if you capture with the rook, that's an instant loss. For example, rook captures, we're going to play rook captures on f2, king captures, queen captures on e3 with check, and now it's a very well-known mating pattern in 7. King f1, now queen to f4 with check. We want to connect this check with the rook on a1. So king to g1, we're going to play queen to d4 with check, force the king into the open, and also pick up the rook here. So king to f1, queen captures on a1, and now we just go for the mate. King f2, we're going to play queen e1 check, king f3, queen to e3 check, king g4, rook to e4 check, and now king wherever will get checkmated, let's say, by the pawn on g6. So after this knight captures on f2, capturing with the rook cannot be played. So of course bishop to c1 is played. King captures, of course, is impossible because the rook defends. So bishop to c1, attacking the rook, and now Magnus plays knight to h3 with check. So what do you play here? Can you capture the knight? Well, if you capture the knight, then we can checkmate the white king in a lot of ways, but queen to g6 is the simplest one, as the g2 square is covered by the rook as well. So once you play king to h1, we're gonna deliver checkmate, or you can give up the queen first, then play king h1, and then we deliver checkmate. So the knight cannot be captured after knight to h3 check. So king to h1, and now Magnus just played knight back to f2 with check. King to g1, again, rook captures is not an option for white, because now your black is just up material, and it's going to be a very easy win for Magnus. So after knight to f2 check, Le repeats king to g1, and now Magnus goes knight back to h3 with check, king to h1, knight to f2 check, king to g1, and it was in this position on move 29 that Magnus and Le agreed to a draw, or rather it's a draw by threefold repetition. So that's why I say it's sad moment, because Magnus doesn't need a win. He doesn't need the extra money they get for winning games in this tournament, but he wants to advance to the semifinals and face whoever he will face there, without even allowing for the possibility of losing the game, which is very much unlike Magnus. He always tries to play the absolute best move. Even when there are several winning moves, he will spend that extra time to find the winning move. But here he just decided that it's too much maybe to even allow for the opportunity to arise for Le to maybe get back into the game. But for you guys who are comfortable in your own homes, or maybe sitting in an airport, or at work, not doing work, after knight to h3 check and king to h1, there is a very nice winning idea here. So feel free to pause the video and finish this brilliancy for Magnus while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this, very nice idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, okay, there are a lot of winning moves, rook c2, rook f2, those are all very nice. However, a rook captures on g2 is just crushing. And now you can see that once the queen comes to e4, there's nothing you can do about this, and there is very little white can do about the position, in any way. So the idea is, once a king captures the rook here, then it's a very simple queen to g2 check, king to h1, and now queen to e4 with check, rook to f3, and of course queen captures on f3 checkmate. So of course this is not something that's difficult for Magnus to calculate. However, after let's say king h1 and we go for this rook captures on g2, there are a lot of moves that white can play, like queen captures on b7. Now the e4 square is guarded, but still you could just play rook to f2 and the game continues, with black having, of course, a completely winning game, but it's always possible to make a mistake, and that's why Magnus forced a draw here. But we definitely had to show it and not allow this to be, like I said, ruined by the times we live in. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and hope a lot of you have found the winning idea of rook captures on g2. So congratulations on that. I would like to thank Richard Schwartz, Ryan Urban, Cloud Strife, Andre Theron, and Cypherkicks for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the semifinals and of course the entire event until it finishes. And of course. Here are the standings. I don't want to. Sorry, not the standings. The who will play against who. So as you can see, Nepo defeated Vincent. It was also a very fine match, so he advances into the semifinals. Yesipenko defeated Eric Hansen, the game that we've shown. So the semifinal first match will be Nepo versus Yesipenko. Artemiev defeated Ding, which was a very, very dramatic event to watch. Ding won game 1, then game 2 ended in a draw. Game 3, Ding was completely winning, went from +7 to -7 in one move. Then he lost that game, and then Artemiev also won the 4th game. So incredible fighter Artemiev coming back from such a terrible position in the match. And as you've seen, Magnus defeated Lei by winning game 1, drawing games 3 and 2, and of course forcing this draw in game 4. So we will see Nepo versus Yesipenko, Artemiev versus Carlsen, and then whoever wins we will see in the finals. So yeah, thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.